It was a moment many, including myself, did not think would happen. Alex Murdaugh taking the stand in his own defense. It was a stunning 2 days that you couldn't take your eyes off of, delivering some of the most explosive testimony of the entire trial. And Murdaugh's attorney wasted no time getting to the point with the very first question he asked.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take this gun or any gun like it and blow your son's brains out on June 7th or any day or any time?
No, I did not.
Did you take a .300 blackout, such as this, and fire it into your wife Maggie's leg, torso, or any part of her body?
No, I did not.
Did you shoot a .300 blackout into her head, causing her death?
Mr. Griffin, I didn't shoot my wife or my son anytime, ever.
At times, several points, Murdaugh got emotional on the stand, sobbing as he described in graphic detail the moment he discovered the bodies of his wife and son.
Did you see them on the ground when you're pulling up in your Suburban?
I did.
And what'd you do when you came to a stop, Alec?
I think I jumped out of my car. I'm not exactly sure what I did, but no, I got out of my car. I know I ran back to my car, called 911. I called 911. I was on the phone with 911. I was trying to tend to Paw. I was trying to tend to Maggie. And I just went back and forth between them.
But then in a stunning twist, Murdaugh changed his story on his whereabouts the night of the murders, admitting that he'd been lying to investigators, to everyone, in fact, since the night of the murders, about the last time he saw Maggie and Paul before they were killed. His admission settled a key inconsistency in what has perhaps been the most significant piece of evidence against him. It's known as the kennel video. Video shot by Paul on his phone just minutes before he and Maggie were killed. 3 voices can be heard, Maggie's, Paul's, and a third that numerous witnesses testified was definitely Murdaugh. But he had previously denied he was at the kennel before the murders that night, and that the last time he'd seen Maggie and Paul that night was earlier at dinner. But on the stand, he changed his story, blaming his addiction to opioids.
Were you, in fact, at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Did you lie to Sled Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th and told them that you stayed at the house after dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you lie to Agent Owen and Agent Croft on the follow-up interview on June 10th that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was at dinner?
I did lie to them.
And in the interview of August 11th, did you tell Agent Owen and Agent Croft, did you lie to them by telling them that you were not down at the kennels on that night?
Yes.
Admitting he had lied, but still denying he had killed Maggie and Paul. But then under cross-examination, Prosecutor Creighton Waters hammered Murdaugh about the change of story, accusing him of concocting a new lie after he could no longer deny the facts presented by that video.
The second that you're confronted with facts that you can't deny, you immediately come up with a new lie.
I admit again that I've lied to people that trusted me.
So we can agree that the prosecution and law enforcement and so many of your friends and family heard for the first time your story about the kennels yesterday after all these weeks of testimony. Can we agree on that?
The law enforcement, my partners, and my friends heard me say that for the first time. Yes, I agree with that.
Let's go back to Bob Schalk and Donte Mills, as well as Pete Strom with us. All right, so you had mentioned, Bob, that you thought that he had no choice but to take the witness stand.
Yes, when that video came out and it was part of the people's direct case in chief, he had no choice, because if he just let that video come in, his defense team let that video come in my opinion, it was over. He was going to get convicted, and he was going to get convicted quickly.
Donte, any other way that they could have dealt with that in terms of presenting evidence, admitting in some way, shape, or form that he was there that night without him testifying?
No, I agree. He had to explain why he was there. He was caught red-handed, and he lied about it. But one thing we saw, and this is what I learned in this case, a liar lies. But the difference is, does he lie for a reason, or does he just lie, even without the need for a reason? And the prosecution really drilled home on him lying for a reason. They tried to drill down. When did you decide to lie? Oh, when you're backed in a corner. That's when you lie, because they're saying he lied about not being there because he committed these murders. The defendant had to get up there and say, well, you know, he's a liar. I'm a liar. And when things come up, or whatever reason is, sometimes I lie and then the lie's out there and I can't take it back. But just because I lied, that doesn't mean that I did something else. Sometimes I'm just a liar. So I think both sides had to develop those arguments and give people an opportunity to make a decision.
I want to play another piece of sound from the trial itself. This is where he was questioned about referring to Paul as Pawpaw. And look, I think this was pretty significant. You can say it doesn't matter, et cetera, but jurors are watching the defendant on the witness stand to assess, do they trust him? And the question was, why are you using these nicknames suddenly when you'd never used them before? This is number one. Let's listen.
Paw, that was your nickname for Paul?
I mean, I called him Pawpaw. Maggie called him Pawpaw. Bus calls him Pawpaw.
Sure.
Roro calls him Pawpaw. I mean, that's
Roro? Who was Roro?
That's Rogan Gibson.
Okay. And this jury, of course, has heard multiple recorded statements of you during the course of this. Did you ever refer to Paul as Pawpaw during that?
I don't know.
Do you recall?
How I referred to I can say Paul if you prefer that.
No, you can call him whatever you want. I'm just asking you if you ever called him that during the course of that entire investigation. Or is that also the first time today, at least publicly?
It was a critical moment there, and I think it ended up being damaging.
Why did you want to be gone?
I mean, I knew all this was coming to a head. I knew how humiliating it was going to be for my son. I mean, I'd been through so much. At the time, in the bad place that I was, it seemed like the better thing to do.
Alex Murdaugh explaining on the stand why months after the murders, as his alleged financial misdeeds were coming to light and fueled by his addiction to opioids, he asked a hitman to shoot him and end his life. He ultimately survived the hit attempt, but those financial troubles haven't gone away. Murdaugh is charged with nearly 100 counts of theft and fraud involving clients and his law firm. Prosecution contending those allegations provided a motive for Murdaugh to kill his wife and son, to take attention away from those crimes.
You have charged me with murdering my wife and my son, and I've sat here for all these weeks listening to all this financial stuff that I did wrong, that I'm embarrassed by. I'm happy to talk to you about as much of that as you want to talk about. I'm required to talk about it as much as you want to talk about it. But the fact is I cannot specifically remember sitting down. The details that you're asking me for, I can't tell you.
Pete Strom, this was a back and forth that went on with Alex Murdaugh where he kept being asked, tell me one time, one incident where you remember looking someone in the eye and lying to them about money. And he kept saying, I'm admitted I've lied. And the question kept coming back, but I'm asking you whether you remember one incident. And he kept coming back to, I've admitted I lied. It was a trial tactician in Murdaugh knowing he doesn't want to give a specific example, but trying to make it seem like he's being incredibly accommodating.
That's right. And I respectfully disagree with your other two guests. I think this was the biggest mistake of the trial, was him wanting to testify. My sources tell me that neither one of his lawyers thought it was a good idea, but he felt like he could convince this jury that he was not guilty. I think they felt like they had three jurors. And at the end of this cross-examination, I think there was no more eye contact with Alec Murdaugh, and the tone changed and the trial changed. And I went from thinking hung jury to guilty at that point.
How do you convince, Donte, a client who wants to take the stand not to take the stand?
It's difficult, especially when that client is a trial lawyer.
Yeah.
So they believe they have a skill set that can translate because they have a history of teaching their clients how to be good witnesses. You tell them, look at the jury, turn and face the jury, speak in generalities. If you're admitting something, don't be specific. These are all things that he taught his clients to do, and he thought that training would get him over the hump. So it's hard to convince someone who believes they have that skill to not use it. Especially, there were times in the beginning of the trial when I thought it wasn't going so well. So I could see him saying, I need to get up here and redeem myself. I need to get up here and turn this around. And I can't imagine being his lawyer and trying to keep him away from that stand.
Yeah, tough to do.
I'm not saying I agreed with the decision to do it, but in my opinion, he had no choice, as Donte was pointing out. But it's very tough to convince someone who thinks that he's smarter than the jury. He's cunning, he's intelligent. And I thought that the one thing that he did do well was saying, look, you want to talk to me about the financials, we'll talk about it when the time's right. I'm here to talk about whether or not I killed my family.
And now he is going to be tried on all of those financial crimes as well.
Which he admitted to.
Which he's now admitted to, and they now have all the evidence that they need to convict him on.